The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Al-Rashid Tower as Omar Al-Rashid stared at his phone in horror. The text message seemed to mock him from the glowing screen. Mr. Al-Rashid, deepest apologies. Food poisoning. Cannot. Translate today. Hospital. Jiangwei. Omar's hands trembled as he read the words again, hoping they would somehow change. In exactly 90 minutes, the most powerful venture capitalists from Beijing would walk through those mahogany doors. They controlled a fund worth $1 billion, and they spoke only Mandarin Chinese, no exceptions, no compromises. It was their way of ensuring only the most prepared, most respectful partners earned their investment. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. At 42, Omar had built his empire from the ground up, from a small import business in old Dubai's spice souks to a multinational corporation worth $800 million. His father, Rashid Al-Rashid, had been a humble pearl diver who taught Omar that true wealth came not from what you accumulated, but from what you contributed to the world. That philosophy had guided Omar through every business decision, every expansion, every moment of doubt. But this meeting represented everything he'd worked toward for the past decade. His revolutionary solar technology could transform energy infrastructure across Asia, providing clean electricity to millions of families still living without power. Without Chinese backing, however, it would remain just another brilliant idea. Gathering dust in Dubai's scorching heat, the irony wasn't lost on him. Omar spoke 7 languages fluently: Arabic, English, French, German, Hindi, Urdu, and even some Russian from his university days at Cambridge. But Mandarin Chinese had always eluded him, despite 3 years of intensive study. The tonal complexities, the cultural nuances embedded in every phrase, the centuries of philosophical tradition underlying each conversation. It was like trying to unlock a treasure chest without the right key. He'd hired Zhang Wei 18 months ago specifically for this moment, paying him a retainer equivalent to most people's annual salary just to ensure his availability for this crucial meeting. His assistant, Layla Hassan, burst through the doors, her usually perfect hijab slightly askew with panic. She'd been with Omar for 8 years, had seen him navigate countless crises, but this was different. This was the culmination of everything they'd built together. Sir, I've called every translation. Service in the Emirates, everyone's booked, sick, or unavailable on such short notice. The Chinese Cultural Center is closed for renovations. The Beijing Trade Office referred us to Zhang Wei. Even the Mandarin professors at American University of Dubai are either traveling or committed to other obligations. Omar loosened his traditional white gutra, feeling like it was suffocating him. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like the desert heat in August. 50 families depended on this company for their livelihoods. The research and development team had worked 18-hour days for 3 years, perfecting the solar panel efficiency rates. The manufacturing facility in Sharjah employed 200 people, many of them skilled workers who'd relocated from Pakistan and India specifically for this project. If this meeting failed, if he couldn't secure Chinese investment, everything would collapse like a house built on shifting sand. There has to be someone, Layla. Anyone. Call the universities again, the embassy, every language school in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Contact the Chinese business associations, the cultural exchange programs, anyone who might know a freelance interpreter. Omar's voice carried the desperation of a man watching his life's work hanging by a thread. I did, sir, Layla's voice cracked with emotion. She'd invested her own career in this company, had turned down lucrative offers from multinational corporations because she believed in Omar's vision. The American University's Chinese department is closed for semester break. The Chinese consulate referred us to the same services that are unavailable. I even called the Dragon Mart in International City. Every Chinese business owner I could reach is either in China for the holiday season or doesn't have the technical vocabulary for a business presentation of this magnitude. Omar pressed his palms against the imported Italian marble conference table, the same table where he'd signed his first major contract, where he'd celebrated his daughter's acceptance to Cambridge, where he'd mourned his father's passing 3 years ago. This table had witnessed the full spectrum of human emotion, but today it felt like an altar where his dreams might be sacrificed to the gods of international commerce. Through the windows, Dubai's skyline stretched toward the horizon, a testament to what was possible when vision met opportunity. The Burj Khalifa pierced the sky like a silver needle. The Dubai frame stood like a golden gateway to the future, and the artificial islands of Palm Jumeirah spread across the coast like humanity's audacious signature on the natural world. But all of that progress, all of that ambition, felt meaningless if he couldn't bridge the linguistic gap that separated him from his Chinese investors. The elevator chimed softly in the distance, a sound that usually meant nothing, but today felt ominous. Soon, those same doors would open to either his salvation or his destruction. Omar walked to his prayer rug, spread it toward Mecca, and performed ablution in the small washroom adjacent to his office. If ever there was a time for divine intervention, this was it. As Omar completed his prayers, asking Allah for guidance and strength, a soft humming drifted through the hallway like a melody from another world. He paused his frantic preparations, straining to listen over the thundering of his own heartbeat and the distant sounds of Dubai's perpetual construction. Someone was singing in what sounded like Chinese? Wo de zu guo, wo de jia, zai wo de xin li. The voice was young, pure, and unmistakably fluent, carrying the tonal precision that Omar had struggled for years to master. Omar's heart nearly stopped. He rushed toward the sound, Layla close behind, their expensive Italian leather shoes clicking frantically against the cold marble floors that had witnessed so many corporate victories and defeats. The singing grew clearer as they moved through the hallway, past the portraits of Omar's father and grandfather, past the awards and certifications that documented the company's rise from a small trading business to an international corporation. Around the corner, near the service elevators that most executives never noticed, they found him, a little boy, no more than 8 years old, sat cross-legged beside a janitor's cart that towered over his tiny frame like a mechanical giant. His dark hair was cut short and practical, and his clothes, a simple white t-shirt with a faded Superman logo and worn blue jeans with carefully patched knees, spoke of modest means but loving care. His sneakers, once white but now showing. The scuffs and stains of a child's adventures were tied with mismatched laces, one blue and one red. Despite his humble appearance, there was something regal about his posture, a natural dignity that seemed to emanate from within. He was organizing cleaning supplies with methodical precision that would have impressed efficiency experts, separating different chemicals, arranging tools by size and function, all while singing effortlessly in perfect Mandarin pronunciation that would have impressed professors at Beijing University. His voice carried the distinctive accent of northern China, specifically Beijing, with the refined tones that marked educated speech. This wasn't tourist Chinese or basic conversation. This was the sophisticated language of literature, philosophy, and high-level discourse. "Excuse me," Omar said gently, in Arabic, kneeling down to the boy's eye level on the hard marble floor. His voice was soft and careful, afraid he might startle this unexpected miracle that had appeared in his darkest hour. The contrast was striking. A billionaire in handmade Italian suits kneeling before a child in second-hand clothes, yet something in the moment suggested that the true wealth might not belong to the man with the expensive watch. "Little one, what's your name?" The boy looked up with wide, intelligent, dark eyes that seemed far too wise for someone who should still believe in fairy tales and the simple certainties of childhood. There was something almost ethereal about his gaze, as if he possessed an old soul wrapped in a young body, as if he could see straight through to people's hearts and find the goodness hidden beneath layers of corporate ambition and adult cynicism. His smile, when it came, was like sunrise breaking over the desert, pure, warming, and somehow transformative. "I'm Ahmad Khalil," he said with a shy smile that lit up his entire face. His voice carried a slight accent, the musical cadence of Arabic mixed with something else. Perhaps the careful pronunciation of someone who had learned multiple languages out of necessity rather than choice. "My mama works here cleaning offices. She's upstairs right now, making everything perfect for important meetings. She always says that cleanliness is next to godliness, and that every space we touch should be better because we were there." Omar's mind raced faster than a Formula One car on the Yas Marina circuit. Could this be real? Could salvation truly come in such an innocent, unexpected package? The boy's Arabic was fluent and educated, suggesting formal schooling despite his family's apparent economic circumstances. His demeanor was polite but not subservient, confident but not arrogant, the bearing of a child who had been raised with love and strong values, regardless of material limitations. "Ahmad, that beautiful song you were singing." "Do you speak Chinese?" Omar asked, hardly daring to hope. The question hung in the air between them, laden with possibilities that neither fully understood yet. Ahmad's face absolutely lit up with pride that radiated from every pore. "Na dang ran jiansheng," he replied in perfect Mandarin. "Of course, sir." The pronunciation was flawless, the tone exactly right, the cultural appropriateness of the formal address suggesting deep understanding of Chinese social customs. "My mama taught me before." His voice faltered slightly, and Omar caught a glimpse of pain that no child should carry before we had to leave Syria. "She said languages were treasures that nobody could ever steal from us, no matter what happened to our country, our home, or our family." He straightened with the resilient determination that Omar recognized in refugees who had survived impossible circumstances. "She learned Chinese when she studied in Beijing before the war. She always said, 'I should practice every day so I could help people someday, maybe be a bridge between different worlds.'" The pieces of Ahmad's story began forming a picture that broke Omar's heart even as it filled him with hope. This child was a refugee, part of the diaspora that had fled Syria's devastating civil war. His mother had clearly been educated, perhaps even privileged, before circumstances forced them to rebuild their lives in a foreign country. Now she cleaned offices to survive while ensuring her son maintained the linguistic gifts that might someday lift them from poverty. Layla gasped audibly, pressing her manicured hand to her chest in shock. As someone who had studied international relations at the American University of Beirut, she understood the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a bilingual child, this was a young person who had somehow maintained academic-level proficiency in one of the world's most challenging languages despite living through war and displacement. Omar felt a surge of hope so powerful it nearly knocked him backward onto the marble floor, but it was tempered by the gravity of what he was considering. Could he really ask a child to shoulder the responsibility of a billion-dollar business? "Negotiation? Ahmad," he said carefully, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing, "how well do you really speak Chinese? Could you have actual conversations with important grown-ups from China? Could you understand complex business terms, technical concepts, maybe even translate negotiations?" The questions poured out of him, each one weighted with the hopes and fears of everyone whose livelihood depended on this meeting's success. "Oh, yes," Ahmad nodded enthusiastically, his eyes bright with excitement and what looked like genuine eagerness to help. "I practice every day with the Chinese workers at the construction site near our apartment in International City. They're building a new shopping mall, and during their lunch breaks, they teach me new words, and I help them with Arabic. Uncle Chen," the foreman, says my pronunciation is like a native speaker from Beijing. He even taught me business terms because he used to work in import-export before becoming an engineer. Ahmad's enthusiasm was infectious, but Omar noticed the details that painted a fuller picture of the boy's life. International City was one of Dubai's most affordable neighborhoods, home to many of the immigrant workers who built the gleaming towers of the more prosperous districts. The fact that Ahmad spent time with construction workers suggested both the family's social circle and his genuine curiosity about the world around him. Most children would shy away from strangers, but Ahmad seemed drawn to learning opportunities wherever he found them. Uncle Chen taught me about contracts, investments, profit margins, and joint ventures, Ahmad continued, his vocabulary impressive for someone his age. He said understanding business Chinese was like having a key to opportunities all over Asia. He also taught me about guanxi, the importance of relationships and trust in Chinese culture. He said that in China, people don't just do business. With companies, they do business with people they respect and trust. Omar exchanged a meaningful look with Layla, both recognizing they might be witnessing something truly miraculous. The boy wasn't just linguistically gifted. He understood cultural nuances that many professional interpreters missed. Guanxi was indeed fundamental to Chinese business culture, and the fact that Ahmad grasped this concept suggested a sophisticated understanding of cross-cultural communication. This was impossible. This was beyond belief. This was either divine intervention or the cruelest twist of fate imaginable. "Sir," Layla whispered urgently, checking her diamond-studded watch with growing panic, "they'll be here in exactly 60 minutes. Even if we wanted to consider this, how could we prepare a child for something this important? What about liability? What about the ethical implications of involving a minor in business negotiations of this magnitude?" Her concerns were valid and professional, but Omar found himself drawn to something ineffable about Ahmad's presence. The boy possessed a quality that transcended his age, a combination of innocence and wisdom that seemed almost otherworldly. In Arabic culture, there was a concept called baraka, divine blessing that manifested through unexpected channels. Perhaps this was exactly that kind of moment. Ahmad tilted his head curiously, studying Omar's worried expression with the intuitive understanding that children possess before they learn to mask their emotions. "Uncle, are you in trouble? My mama always says, when people look as worried as you do right now, they really need someone to help them solve their problems. She taught me that helping others is how we show gratitude for our own blessings, even when those blessings seem small." The wisdom in those words, coming from someone who had lost his homeland and lived in poverty, struck Omar like a physical blow. Here was this precious child, innocent and pure as fresh snow, offering to help a complete stranger without asking for anything in return. In that moment, Omar realized he was facing a choice that would define not just his business future, but his character. Would he accept help from someone society deemed insignificant? Would he trust a child with his life's work? "Ahmad Habibi," Omar said, using the Arabic term of endearment that he reserved for his own children, "we have some very important visitors coming from China in just a little while. They only speak Chinese, absolutely no English or Arabic, and our translator got sick at the last minute. Could you possibly help us talk to them? I need to be honest with you. This is very important business. If something goes wrong, many people could lose their jobs. I don't want to put that pressure on someone your age." Ahmad's eyes grew wide with excitement that could have powered the entire building. "Really? You want me to help with something super important?" He jumped to his feet, barely reaching Omar's waist even when standing on his tiptoes, but somehow managing to project an aura of readiness and capability that belied his small stature. "I promise I'll do my very, very best. Mama always said that helping others was the most important thing we can do in this world, and that kindness was the greatest treasure anyone could give away." The sincerity in Ahmad's voice, the eager willingness to serve without understanding the full implications, reminded Omar of the Prophet's teaching that Allah often sent help through the most unlikely messengers. Perhaps this was exactly such a moment. "But Habibi," Omar continued gently, "you need to understand something. These are very serious business people. They might ask difficult questions, use complicated words, maybe even test your abilities. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility?" Ahmad's expression grew thoughtful, and for a moment he looked far older than his 8 years. "Uncle Omar, when we left Syria, I was scared every day. Scared of the bombs, scared of the soldiers, scared of leaving everything I knew. But Mama taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means helping people even when you are scared. If these Chinese people can help you help other people, then I want to try." His small hands clenched into determined fists. "Besides, Uncle Chen always said that respect is earned through actions, not words. Maybe I can show them that even small people can do important things." That afternoon, as Omar completed his Asr prayers in his private office, he realized something profound was about to happen. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about faith, destiny, and the mysterious ways Allah worked in the world. He'd spent the last hour preparing Ahmad as best he could, providing him with key vocabulary, explaining the basics of the solar technology, and most importantly, trying to convey the cultural sensitivities that would be crucial in the upcoming meeting. Ahmad had absorbed everything like a sponge, asking intelligent questions that revealed a sophisticated understanding of both technology and human nature. "So the solar panels work like leaves on a tree?" he'd asked. "They take energy from the sun and turn it into something people can use?" "That's beautiful, Uncle Omar. In Syria, before the war, my grandfather had a garden where every plant had a purpose. Some gave food, some gave medicine, some gave shade. Your invention is like planting trees that give electricity." The metaphor was so apt, so poetic, that Omar realized Ahmad might actually be the perfect translator for this meeting. Chinese culture valued such analogies, and the boy's ability to find meaningful comparisons between technology and nature would resonate with investors who appreciated both innovation and tradition. Layla had worked frantically to prepare backup plans, but as the appointed time approached, it became clear that Ahmad was their only option. She'd managed to find a suit jacket from the building's lost and found, apparently left behind by someone's teenager after a corporate family day. And with some quick alterations using the sewing kit from the first aid station, they'd created something approximating business attire for their unlikely translator. Ahmad stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting his borrowed tie with the same seriousness that Omar brought to preparing for major presentations. "Do I look professional, Uncle Omar?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and nervousness that was entirely appropriate for someone about to undertake their first international business negotiation. "You look perfect, Habibi," Omar replied, and he meant it, despite the ill-fitting clothes and the obvious signs of the boy's humble background. Ahmad carried himself with natural dignity that couldn't be purchased or taught. But remember, the most important thing isn't how you look. It's how you make them feel. Show them respect, translate exactly what everyone says, and trust your instincts about what they need to hear. "Like Mama does when she cleans offices," Ahmad said thoughtfully. "She says her job isn't just to make things clean, but to make people feel comfortable and respected in their workspace. She always leaves little touches, fresh flowers if she finds them, or arranging papers neatly, or sometimes just kind word in whatever language she knows they speak. Maybe being a translator is like that too, making sure everyone feels understood." The insight was remarkable, and Omar realized that Ahmad's understanding of service transcended language barriers. The boy grasped something fundamental about communication that many professional translators missed: the emotional component that turned mere words into genuine connection. As they prepared to return to the conference room, Ahmad suddenly looked serious. "Uncle Omar, can I ask you something important?" Omar nodded, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. "If I do a good job today, will you help my mama? Not with money, she's too proud for charity, but maybe a better job where she can use her education instead of just cleaning." She studied economics in Damascus before everything changed. She's really smart about numbers and business, but nobody here knows that because they only see a refugee woman in cleaning clothes. The request broke Omar's heart and filled him with respect for both Ahmad and his mother. Here was a child willing to take on enormous responsibility, not for personal gain, but to help his family rebuild their dignity. "Ahmad, regardless of what happens in this meeting, I promise to help your mother find work that matches her abilities, but not because of any deal we make today, because it's the right thing to do." Relief and gratitude flooded Ahmad's young face. "Thank you, Uncle Omar. Now I'm ready to help you change the world." As they walked back toward the conference room, Omar reflected on how dramatically his understanding of wealth and success had shifted in just a few hours. He'd spent years building his empire, accumulating material possessions and social status, but this refugee child had shown him something invaluable about the true nature of prosperity. It wasn't what you accumulated for yourself, but what you contributed to others. The elevator chimed softly, and Omar straightened his traditional white thobe for the final time. Ahmad stood beside him, looking impossibly small against the backdrop of floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Dubai's glittering skyline. But there was nothing small about his presence or his determination. "Remember, Ahmad," Omar whispered, his voice tight with nervous energy that could have powered electrical grids. "Just translate exactly what they say to me and exactly what I say to them. Don't worry about understanding everything. Focus on making sure everyone understands each other." Ahmad nodded solemnly, his small hands clasped gracefully in front of him like a diplomat preparing for peace negotiations. "Don't worry at all, Uncle Omar. I absolutely won't let you down." His voice carried the same conviction that Omar had, heard in his own children when they made promises they intended to keep no matter what obstacles arose. "Mama always said that when someone trusts you with something important, you protect that trust like it's made of the most precious pearls." In the Arabian Gulf, the elevator doors opened with a soft mechanical whisper, and Omar's entire world shifted on its axis forever. Liu Wei entered first, a tall, impeccably dressed man in his early 60s, with distinguished salt and pepper hair and the commanding bearing of someone who controlled vast fortunes. His charcoal Tom Ford suit probably cost more than most families, earned in 6 months, and his sharp black eyes held the calculating intensity of someone who had built empires with nothing more than intelligence and ruthless determination. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture measured, conveying the controlled power of someone accustomed to having his words shape the destinies of corporations and countries. Behind him, Zhang Ming moved with the fluid precision of a master. Chess player, younger than Liu by perhaps a decade, but his reputation was even more formidable throughout Asian business circles. Financial magazines called him the Golden Dragon because of his legendary ability to transform struggling companies into market leaders with surgical precision. His presence filled the room like electricity before a storm. You couldn't see it, but you could feel its potential to either illuminate or destroy everything in its path. Their penetrating eyes immediately fell on Ahmad, and Omar watched in horror as their expressions shifted from mild curiosity to what appeared to be barely contained displeasure. The cultural clash was immediate and obvious. In their world, business was conducted by adults in boardrooms, not by children in borrowed clothes. The presence of a child at such a crucial meeting would seem either deeply disrespectful or completely unprofessional to men who had spent decades navigating the rigid hierarchies of international commerce. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Liu said in heavily accented English, his tone cold enough to freeze the Persian Gulf. "What exactly is this child doing in our business meeting? We came here to discuss $1 billion in serious investment opportunities, not to participate in some cultural performance or publicity stunt." His words carried the weight of someone accustomed to having his expectations met without question or compromise. Zhang Ming remained silent, but his body language spoke volumes. Arms crossed, stance wide, eyes narrowed in assessment. He was clearly evaluating whether this unexpected development represented incompetence, desperation, or some elaborate strategic move he hadn't anticipated. In Chinese business culture, any deviation from expected protocol was viewed with deep suspicion, and the presence of a child in formal negotiations would trigger every alarm bell they'd developed through decades of high-stakes international dealing. Omar felt his carefully constructed empire beginning to crumble before a single word had been properly translated. His mouth open to offer desperate explanations, apologies, anything that might salvage the situation. But then something miraculous happened, something that would be discussed in business schools and cultural exchange programs for decades to come. Ahmad stepped forward with quiet dignity that would have made ancient Arab poets weep with pride. Despite his small stature and borrowed clothes, he carried himself with the natural grace of someone born to diplomacy, his chin raised with the confidence of someone addressing the United Nations General Assembly, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the room with crystalline clarity. "Nin hao Liu Xiansheng, Nin hao Zhang Xiansheng," he said in absolutely flawless Mandarin, his voice clear as crystal bells ringing across peaceful desert oases. The pronunciation was perfect, not just accurate, but carrying the subtle tonal variations that marked educated Beijing speech. "Woshi Ahmad Khalil, wo jiangwei nimen dang fanyi, wo hen rongyao ning renshi nimen liang wei." "I am Ahmad Khalil, and I will be your translator today. It is an honor to meet you both." The transformation in the room was instantaneous and utterly magical. Both powerful men's eyebrows shot upward in complete shock, their mouths falling slightly open in undisguised amazement. This wasn't tourist Chinese or basic conversational phrases. This was sophisticated, culturally appropriate formal language delivered with the confidence and precision of a seasoned diplomat. Ahmad had just greeted them in perfect Beijing Mandarin with impeccable grammar and pronunciation, introduced himself with appropriate humility, and expressed honor at meeting them, all while maintaining the respectful tone that Chinese culture demanded in formal business settings. But Ahmad wasn't finished. He continued in Mandarin with a brief explanation that demonstrated not just linguistic ability, but cultural intelligence that many professional interpreters lacked. "Wo jidao zhege king guang hen teshu, dan wo jiang nin bao zheng, wo dui shang ye. Fanya yu shenke de laijie, binki wo hui yong zuida de zhuanye sweeping lei purnime." "I know this situation is unusual, but I want to assure you that I have a deep understanding of business translation, and I will serve you with the highest level of professionalism." Zhang leaned toward Liu and whispered rapidly in Mandarin, completely unaware that their every word was being understood by the 8-year-old boy before them. "Lao Liu, did you hear that accent? It's absolutely flawless, better than most professional translators we've worked with in 20 years of international business. The grammar is perfect, the cultural sensitivity is remarkable. Where could this extraordinary child have possibly learned to speak like a Beijing native? And did you notice how he addressed us? Perfect protocol, appropriate honorifics, exactly the level of respect we would expect from a senior diplomat." Ahmad turned to Omar with a gentle, reassuring smile that could have melted the hardest business heart. His expression conveyed both confidence in his abilities and understanding of the gravity of the situation. Uncle Omar, Mr. Zhang, just expressed amazement at my Chinese accent and wants to know where I learned to speak so well. He seems very pleasantly surprised by my language abilities, and said I showed proper respect in my greeting. Omar felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly buckled his knees. Not only had Ahmad navigated the crucial first moment successfully, but he'd apparently impressed two of the most demanding businessmen in Asia. "Gentlemen, please make yourselves completely comfortable," Omar said, gesturing toward the polished conference table that had witnessed both spectacular triumphs and devastating defeats over the decades of high-stakes negotiations. As the distinguished visitors settled into luxurious leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, Omar watched with fascination as their entire demeanor shifted. The initial shock and disapproval had given way to curiosity and what appeared to be genuine respect for Ahmad's linguistic abilities. In Chinese culture, mastery of language was considered a mark of intelligence and breeding, and the boy's flawless Mandarin had clearly exceeded every expectation. Ahmad climbed gracefully onto a seat that absolutely dwarfed his tiny frame, his small legs dangling freely in the air like a child sitting at the adult's table during family gatherings. Yet there was nothing childish about his composure or attention to the proceedings. He looked like a precious child playing elaborate dress-up games in an adult world of power and money. Yet there was something genuinely regal about his natural poise that commanded immediate respect despite his diminutive size. Mr. Al-Rashid, Liu began in rapid, sophisticated Mandarin, his tone now considerably warmer and more respectful than his initial English greeting. "We must honestly admit that we have never in our entire careers conducted serious business negotiations with such a remarkably young interpreter. Please tell us how you discovered this absolutely extraordinary child. His language skills are remarkable, but we are curious about his background and training." Ahmad translated with smooth professional confidence that would have impressed United Nations interpreters. His voice remained steady and clear as he conveyed not just the words, but the tone and cultural nuances of Liu's inquiry. "Uncle Omar, Mr. Liu says he's never worked with such a young translator before, and he wants to know how you found me and about my background. He seems impressed with my Chinese, but he's curious about how I learned it." Omar felt a powerful surge of protective pride as he carefully considered his response. He needed to be honest about Ahmad's circumstances while presenting them in a way that would resonate with Chinese cultural values of education, family devotion, and overcoming adversity through determination. Ahmad is the son of one of our valued employees. His mother is from Syria, where she received an excellent education before circumstances forced their family to relocate. When our professional translator became ill at the last moment, Ahmad courageously volunteered to help us. As Ahmad relayed Omar's words in elegant Mandarin, adding his own subtle touches that enhanced the cultural appropriateness of the message, Omar continued, "I've learned through years of experience that true talent and wisdom often appear in the most unexpected places, and genuine insight frequently comes from those who have overcome the greatest challenges." Ahmad's family represents the kind of resilience and dedication that builds successful partnerships. The response clearly resonated with both Chinese investors. Zhang nodded approvingly as Ahmad finished the translation, then spoke directly to the boy in Mandarin. "Young Ahmad, your Chinese is truly exceptional. Where did you study? Which teachers guided your development? Your pronunciation suggests Beijing training, but your vocabulary shows remarkable breadth for someone your age." Ahmad's response revealed both his intelligence and his instinctive understanding of how to build trust through personal connection. "Jiexianin de Guojiang, Zhang Xianxing, Warde Mama zai Beijing da Sui, Suexi Guo Jingji Sui, zai Zhongguo Shenghuo Lisan Nian, Ta Jiao Wo Zhongwen, Bing Kie Ga Osuo, Yuyan Shi Lian Shibu Tong Wenhua de Kiao Liang." Thank you for your praise, Mr. Zhang. My mother studied economics at Beijing University and lived in China for 3 years. She taught me Chinese and told me that language is a bridge connecting different cultures. The revelation that Ahmad's mother had studied at Beijing University, one of China's most prestigious institutions, completely transformed the dynamic. Liu and Zhang exchanged meaningful glances, clearly recognizing that they were dealing with someone from an educated family who understood Chinese culture intimately, not just a child who had picked up conversational phrases. "Your mother studied." "At Beta?" Liu asked, using the colloquial name for Beijing University that only those familiar with Chinese academic culture would recognize. What was her field of specialization? When did she study there? The questions came rapidly, reflecting genuine interest rather than mere politeness. Ahmad's eyes brightened as he responded, "Ta zhuanye shi guoji jingji maoyi, 2008 Niandao 2011 Nianzai nar. Ta changchang gaosu wo guanyu zhongguo de jingji fajan he wenhua chuantong. Ta short zhongguo ren zhongxi jiaoyu hit jiating ju xiangwo men alabo ren yang." She specialized in international economics and trade from 2008 to 2011. She often tells me about China's economic development and cultural traditions. She says Chinese people value education and family, just like us Arabs. Omar watched in amazement as Ahmad not only answered the questions perfectly, but managed to draw cultural parallels that resonated deeply with Chinese values. The boy wasn't just translating language. He was building bridges between world views, finding common ground between diverse traditions. This was diplomacy at its finest, and it was coming from an 8-year-old refugee child whose family cleaned offices to survive. Zhang turned to Omar with newfound respect. "Mr. Al-Rashid, you have been blessed to find such a remarkable young person. In China, we have a saying, 'A teacher for a day is a father for a lifetime.' This child has clearly been raised by someone who understands the value of knowledge and the importance of cultural exchange. We are honored to work with him today." For the next intensive 2 hours, something truly magical and unprecedented unfolded in that corporate boardroom. Ahmad wasn't simply translating words from one language to another. He was completely transforming the entire dynamic and emotional atmosphere of the meeting. When Omar explained complex technical concepts about photovoltaic cell efficiency and advanced energy storage capabilities, Ahmad somehow found ways to make them crystal clear in Mandarin, using analogies and metaphors that resonated with Chinese cultural understanding. The boy demonstrated an intuitive grasp of cross-cultural communication that went far beyond mere linguistic competence. When Omar described the solar panel's silicon composition, Ahmad translated it as, "like the desert sand transformed by fire and wisdom into something that captures the sun's qi." When discussing energy storage batteries, he explained them as vessels that hold the dragon's breath until it's needed to power homes and dreams. These weren't just translations. They were cultural adaptations that made complex technology accessible through familiar concepts. Liu and Zhang found themselves leaning forward with interest, occasionally asking follow-up questions that revealed their growing engagement with both the technology and the young translator facilitating their understanding. When Liu asked detailed questions about intellectual property protection and technology transfer protocols, Ahmad's translations were so precise and nuanced that Omar found himself explaining complicated concepts with greater clarity than ever before. The boy seemed to understand intuitively when to translate literally and when to provide cultural context that helped bridge understanding gaps between Arabic and Chinese business practices. But Ahmad's contribution went far beyond technical accuracy. His innocent presence changed the entire emotional atmosphere of the room like sunrise melting away night's shadows. His genuine enthusiasm for the life-saving potential of the technology was infectious. When Omar described how the solar installations could power remote medical clinics, Ahmad's eyes lit up with pure joy, and he spontaneously added his own insights. that deepened the investor's understanding of the human impact. "Mr. Liu, Mr. Zhang," Ahmad said directly in Mandarin after translating Omar's technical explanation. "Uncle Omar's invention is like bringing the sun's blessing to people who live in darkness. In my country, before the war, many villages had no electricity. Children couldn't study at night. Families couldn't preserve medicine for sick relatives. Mothers couldn't power machines to help their babies breathe. This technology is like hope, becoming real, like turning sunlight into life itself." The room fell into profound silence as these hardened businessmen contemplated the humanitarian implications through the eyes of a child who had experienced both darkness and light. Omar watched in amazement as Liu's stern expression softened and Zhang's calculating demeanor gave way to something approaching wonder. These were men who typically thought in terms of market penetration rates and return on investment, but Ahmad was helping them see the human stories behind the statistics. Zhang spoke quietly in Mandarin, his voice thick with unexpected emotion. "Young Ahmad, you speak of bringing light to darkness. Have you personally experienced the darkness you describe?" The question was gentle but probing, revealing the Chinese cultural value of understanding personal context before making judgments. Ahmad nodded solemnly, his young face carrying memories that no child should possess. "Zai Sulia, Wojaju Zai Yigeme Yu Dianli de Kunshuang, Mama Yong Laju Gewadugushi, Baba Yong Shudiandeng Shuli Kiche, Dang Zhenjeng Kai Shishi, Lian Laju Du Mai Bu Daole, Women Jining Zai Hian Zhong Deng Dai Tian Liang. In Syria, my family lived in a village without electricity. Mama used candles to read me stories. Papa used flashlights to repair cars. When the war started, we couldn't even buy candles. We could only wait in darkness for daylight to come." The translation revealed layers of meaning that transcended mere words. Ahmad wasn't just describing technical problems, he was sharing lived experience of how energy poverty affected every aspect of human dignity and family life. His story connected the abstract concept of renewable energy to the concrete reality of families huddled in darkness, hoping for better days. Liu leaned forward, his business mask completely dropped. "And now? How has your family situation changed since coming to Dubai?" The question revealed genuine concern rather than mere professional curiosity. "Zhenzai women yu dian li, yuangquan de fangzi, yu shi wang," Ahmad replied with a smile that could have powered the entire building. "Now we have electricity, we have a safe home, we have hope. Mama Maid Tianwan Shang Du Ning Gewo Du Shu, Waning Zaiwan Shang Suexi Zhongwen He Yingwen, Wahai Neng Kana, Do Baba Zaizo Biran, Siuli Kicheshi de Singfu Biao Ding." Every evening, Mama can read books to me, I can study Chinese and English at night. I can even see Papa's happy expression when he helps fix other people's cars. The simple joy in Ahmad's description of basic electrical access struck both investors with unexpected force. These were men who controlled billions of dollars, who lived in penthouses with smart home systems and unlimited power consumption. Yet they were being reminded by a child that electricity wasn't just a commodity. It was the foundation of human dignity, education, safety, and family connection. Omar realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in his decades of business experience. The formal boundaries between negotiators and translator had dissolved, and Ahmad had become not just a linguistic bridge, but an emotional catalyst that was transforming how everyone in the room understood the deeper purpose of their potential partnership. As the golden Dubai sun began to set through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the conference table, the meeting entered its most crucial and potentially treacherous phase. Omar had presented every technical detail of his revolutionary solar platform, answered dozens of complex questions with expertise earned through years of dedicated research, and watched Ahmad handle every linguistic challenge with remarkable grace and cultural intelligence. But now came the moment he'd been dreading with every fiber of his being, the brutal financial negotiations that would determine whether his dreams would flourish or die in this very room. The shift in atmosphere was palpable as Liu's expression grew more serious, and Zhang pulled out a leather portfolio filled with financial documents. This was the moment when humanitarian ideals collided with economic realities, where beautiful visions were reduced to cold mathematics of risk assessment and return calculations. Omar had witnessed countless deals collapse at exactly this juncture, when the poetry of possibility gave way to the prose of profit margins. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Liu said, his tone becoming noticeably more formal and businesslike, "your technology is genuinely impressive, and this young translator has provided us with remarkable insights into both the technical capabilities and humanitarian potential of your innovations. However, we must now discuss the practical realities of investment terms and funding arrangements." Ahmad translated with perfect accuracy, but Omar caught the subtle tension in the boy's posture as he sensed the shift toward more contentious territory. "We have reviewed your preliminary financial projections and market analysis," Zhang continued, in rapid Mandarin, his intimidating business mask sliding firmly back into place. "Based on comparable investments in the renewable energy sector and our standard risk assessment protocols, we typically invest no more than $400 million in first-round funding for technological platforms of this scope and stage of development." Omar's heart began to sink even before Ahmad finished the translation. 400 million was substantial, but his projections indicated that effective market penetration across Asia would require at least 600 million in initial capitalization. The shortfall would mean either accepting a much slower growth trajectory or seeking additional investors who might dilute his control and complicate the decision-making process. But Zhang wasn't finished outlining their standard terms. "Additionally, we require 55% equity ownership in return for our investment, along with controlling interest in all Asian operations and the right to approve major strategic decisions regarding technology development and market expansion." The words hit Omar like physical blows. 55% would mean losing control of his own company, surrendering the vision that had driven 15 years of research and development to investors who, despite their apparent interest in humanitarian applications, ultimately answered to shareholders demanding maximum returns. Ahmad translated the terms with professional accuracy, but Omar noticed the boy's eyes growing wide with concern as he understood the implications. Even at 8 years old, Ahmad seemed to grasp that these weren't just numbers. They represented Omar's ability to maintain his vision for how the technology would be developed and deployed. The room fell silent as Omar processed the devastating reality of what was being offered. This was historically where promising deals fell apart completely. In the merciless mathematics of international finance, where human emotions had no place and beautiful dreams were reduced to nothing more than percentages and profit projections. He could accept terms that would provide substantial funding but surrender control of his life's work. Or he could reject the offer and watch his technology remain a brilliant prototype that never reached the millions of families who needed it. Before Omar could formulate any response, something extraordinary happened that would be studied in business schools for decades to come. Ahmad raised his small hand with quiet confidence, but instead of seeking permission to speak, he addressed the investors directly with a question that cut through all the financial complexity to reach something deeper. "Excuse me, Uncle Liu and Uncle Zhang," he said with polite respect in flawless Mandarin. "May I please ask you both a very personal question?" Both powerful men looked genuinely surprised by the interruption, but there was something in Ahmad's tone, a combination of innocence and wisdom, that commanded their attention rather than their irritation. "When you were little boys like me," Ahmad continued, with a voice carrying understanding that seemed impossible for his young age, "did you ever have a dream so big it scared you? But you knew deep in your hearts that if you could somehow make it come true, It would help lots and lots of people who were suffering. Did you ever imagine something so important that you would rather try and fail than never try at all? The question hung in the air like incense in a temple, filling the space with something sacred and transformative. Liu and Zhang exchanged meaningful glances, clearly not expecting such a profound philosophical inquiry from their 8-year-old translator. The boy had somehow managed to redirect the conversation from the mechanical details of financial structuring to the fundamental human motivations that had originally driven these men to become investors in world-changing technologies. Liu was the first to respond, his voice growing soft with distant memory as he allowed himself to be drawn back to a time before spreadsheets and risk assessments had become the primary language of his dreams. "I did have such a dream," he admitted slowly, his usual business, composure giving way to something more vulnerable and authentic. "I desperately wanted to build schools in my grandmother's village in rural Hunan province. Everyone told me I was too young, too poor, too foolish to dream so impossibly big. The village elders said education was a luxury for city people, not for farmers' children." Ahmad's eyes brightened with genuine interest and empathy. "And did you make your dream come true, Uncle Liu?" The question was asked with the earnest curiosity of a child who still believed that good intentions and hard work could overcome any obstacle. "Eventually, yes," Liu replied, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and melancholy. "But it required many difficult years and many special people who believed in impossible dreams when absolutely no one else would dare to. We built 17 schools that now serve over 3,000 children. But the cost," he paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully, "the cost was learning to think like a businessman instead of a dreamer. Learning to measure success in numbers instead of smiles." Ahmad turned to Zhang with the same earnest, respectful attention. "What about you, Uncle Zhang? What was your big, scary dream when you were little?" The boy's ability to maintain focus on human connection rather than financial details was remarkable, and Omar realized he was witnessing a master class in emotional intelligence from someone who couldn't even vote yet. Zhang's stern expression melted away like ice in warm sunshine, revealing something tender and long buried beneath decades of corporate armor. "I wanted to create a modern hospital in my struggling hometown in Guangzhou. The doctors there had no advanced equipment, no reliable electricity, no way to save people who could have lived if they'd been born somewhere else. People died who could have been saved with better medical technology." "Did you build your beautiful hospital?" Ahmad asked softly, his voice carrying the same reverence that Omar had heard when the boy spoke about his mother's dreams and sacrifices. "Yes." "Precious child," Zhang replied, his eyes suspiciously bright with unshed tears. "It's been operating successfully for 12 years now and has saved thousands of lives. But like Liu, I had to learn to balance dreams with reality, hope with pragmatism." His voice grew quieter. "Sometimes I wonder if we've become so good at protecting our investments that we've forgotten how to recognize when we're looking at something that could change the world." Ahmad nodded thoughtfully, processing this information with the seriousness of a judge weighing crucial evidence in a case that would determine someone's fate. Then he looked at Omar with such complete trust and admiration that it made the businessman's chest tighten with overwhelming emotion. The boy somehow understood that this moment was about more than money. It was about whether these 3 men could find a way to honor both practical realities and transformative possibilities. "Uncle Omar's dream is exactly like yours were," Ahmad said, switching back to Mandarin with passionate conviction that seemed to emanate from his very soul. "He wants to help doctors save people like my beloved mama. He wants to bring light to villages like the one where I was born. He wants to make sure that no child has to choose between studying and darkness, that no family has to watch medicine spoil because there's no refrigeration." Ahmad turned back to the investors with the moral authority that only pure innocence could carry. His small voice filled the conference room with something that transcended the usual boundaries of business negotiations. But dreams that big and important need true friends who understand how meaningful they are, not just business partners who only count money. My mama used to say that when you find someone with a genuinely good heart and a dream that could help the whole world, you don't just give them some help, you give them enough help to make the dream completely real. The boy's voice grew stronger as he continued, his words carrying the weight of lived experience and inherited wisdom. Because some dreams are too important for humanity to let them fail. Some dreams are like seeds that could grow into forests, but only if they're planted in soil rich enough to support their growth. He paused, looking directly at each man in turn. Uncle Liu, Uncle Jiang, you both built beautiful things that help people. Now you can help Uncle Omar build something even more beautiful, something that brings the sun's power to everyone who needs it. The silence that followed was unlike anything Omar had experienced in decades of business negotiations. It was charged with possibility and weighted with the recognition that they were being challenged by a child to choose between the safety of conventional thinking and the courage required for transformational change. The silence in the boardroom, stretched like an eternity, broken only by the soft ticking of Omar's antique grandfather clock and the distant hum of Dubai's traffic 42 floors below. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished conference table, creating patterns of light and darkness that seemed to mirror the choice facing everyone in the room. Liu and Zhang sat motionless, staring at Ahmad with expressions that had transformed from cold calculation to something approaching wonder and recognition. Omar held his breath, understanding that his entire future hung in the balance of this moment. Not just his business future, but his legacy, his family's security, and most importantly, his ability to bring sustainable energy to the millions of families across Asia who still lived without reliable electricity. The weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like the desert heat in August, but for the first time in hours, he felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, he knew that Ahmad had spoken truth with the kind of moral clarity that adults often lost in their pursuit of practical solutions. Finally, Liu cleared his throat, his voice thick with unexpected emotion. Young Ahmad, he began in Mandarin, his words careful and deliberate. In 30 years of international business dealings, no one has ever made us remember why we first started investing in people's dreams instead of just pursuing profit margins. You have reminded us of something we had almost forgotten, that business at its best is about building bridges between human need and human capability. Zhang nodded slowly, his eyes suspiciously bright with unshed tears that he didn't bother to hide. We began our careers because we wanted to change the world and help brilliant innovators bring their visions to life, not simply to accumulate more wealth for our shareholders. Somewhere along the difficult journey of building our fund, we forgot that noble purpose. He looked directly at Ahmad with something approaching reverence. But you have helped us remember who we used to be, and more importantly, who we still could choose to be. Ahmad translated faithfully, though Omar could see the boy didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what was unfolding before them all. The child had somehow managed to reach past decades of financial conditioning to touch the original motivations that had driven these men to become investors in transformative technologies. He had reminded them of their younger selves, when profit was a means to an end rather than an end in itself. Liu rose from his chair with ceremonial dignity, his movements carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape not just the immediate deal, but potentially influence how his fund approached future investments. Mr. Al-Rashid, he continued, in Mandarin, his voice gaining strength with each word. After careful consideration and this remarkable child's wisdom, we have reached our final decision. Omar's heart hammered against his ribs as he waited for words that would either vindicate, Years of research and sacrifice are condemn his dreams to remain unrealized fantasies. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as Liu prepared to speak words that would change everything. We will invest $700 million in your revolutionary solar technology, Liu announced with quiet authority. Omar's legs nearly gave out completely. $700 million, nearly double what he had dared hope for in his most optimistic projections. The amount would allow for rapid scaling across multiple Asian markets simultaneously, comprehensive research and development expansion, and the kind of robust manufacturing capacity that could drive costs down to make the technology accessible to even the poorest communities. But Liu wasn't finished with his stunning announcement. However, he continued, and Omar's soaring heart momentarily clenched with fear that some impossible condition was about to destroy his euphoria, we want only 35% equity, not the 55% we typically demand. The words hit Omar like lightning on a clear day. Retaining 65% ownership meant maintaining control of his vision, ensuring that humanitarian considerations would always balance profit motives, guaranteeing that the technology would serve those who needed it most rather than just those who could afford it most. This precious child has reminded us that some dreams are far too important to own, Zhang added, his voice carrying genuine conviction. They must be shared with the world, nurtured by partners who understand their significance, protected by people who remember that behind every technological innovation are real families, real children, real hopes for a better future. Ahmad's eyes grew wide as saucers as he translated the incredible news, his young voice trembling with excitement and awe. Uncle Omar, they want to give you $700 million. That's enough money to help bring electricity to millions and millions of people. They said some dreams are too important for any one person to own completely. But the investors weren't finished with their surprises. Zhang leaned forward, speaking directly to Ahmad with the kind of respect typically reserved for senior diplomatic colleagues. Young friend, we have one more condition for this investment, a condition that we believe is essential for the success of this project. Omar held his breath, wondering what requirement could possibly follow such generous terms. Zhang's expression grew warm with something approaching grandfatherly affection as he continued in Mandarin. We want you, Ahmad Khalil, to become our official youth cultural ambassador for this project. When we launch across Asia, we want you to speak publicly about why this technology matters so desperately to families like yours. The world needs to hear from someone who truly understands that behind every innovation are real people whose lives will be transformed. Ahmad's mouth fell open in shock, his young mind struggling to process the magnitude of what was being offered. Uncle Omar, he whispered in Arabic, his voice filled with wonder and uncertainty. They want me to be an ambassador? That sounds incredibly important and maybe a little scary. Omar knelt beside Ahmad's oversized chair, his own voice choked with overwhelming emotion that threatened to spill over into tears of gratitude and disbelief. Ahmad, Habibi, Omar said gently, using the Arabic endearment that had become natural. Between them, do you understand what has just happened here? These generous men want to give us enough money to bring electricity to villages across Asia, to power hospitals and schools and homes where families have lived in darkness for generations. And it's all because of you, because of your pure heart, your incredible gift for languages, and your natural ability to help people remember what truly matters. But Omar knew he needed to be completely honest about what this opportunity would mean for the boy and his family. Being an ambassador means traveling to different countries, speaking to large groups of people, maybe even appearing on television and in newspapers. You would help us explain to doctors and government officials and business leaders how our technology can prevent other children from losing their parents the way you lost your homeland. Ahmad's expression grew thoughtful and serious, his 8-year-old mind wrestling with responsibilities that would challenge adults. Would I still live with Mama? Would I still go to school? Would other kids think I'm trying to be more important than them? The questions revealed the wisdom of a child who understood that extraordinary opportunities often came with extraordinary complications. Everything would be done to make sure you could still be a normal little boy, Omar assured him. School would always come first, family time would be protected, and we would never ask you to do anything that made you uncomfortable or unsafe. He paused, wanting to give Ahmad the freedom to refuse without feeling guilty. But Habibi, you need to know that you don't have to say yes. What you've already done today has changed everything. You've given us this amazing opportunity, and you don't owe us anything more. Ahmad looked around the room at the three powerful men who were all watching him with expressions of genuine care and respect. These weren't adults trying to exploit a child's talents. These were people who had been touched by his authenticity and wanted to help him grow into his potential while protecting his innocence. "Can I ask Mama before I decide?" Ahmad said, quietly. "She always taught me that big decisions should be made together as a family, and I want to make sure this would make her proud instead of worried." The maturity of his response impressed everyone in the room and confirmed that his remarkable character wasn't accidental. It was the product of careful nurturing by a mother who had raised him with strong values despite their difficult circumstances. "Of course," Liu said warmly in Mandarin. "In Chinese culture, family approval is essential for any important decision. We would be honored to meet your mother and discuss this opportunity with her directly. We want to ensure that this arrangement serves your family's needs, not just our business objectives." Just then, as if summoned by the mention of her name, the elevator chimed softly, and a woman in a simple black abaya stepped out into the hallway. Her face was partially covered according to traditional Islamic practice, but her eyes immediately began scanning the area with the focused concern of a mother searching for her child. "Ahmad," she called in accented Arabic, her voice carrying the musical cadence of educated Syrian speech mixed with the careful pronunciation of someone who had learned to navigate multiple cultures. "Habibi, where are you? It's past time for Maghrib prayers, and I've been looking everywhere for you." "Mama," Ahmad's voice rang out from the boardroom with pure joy and relief. He had been confident and composed throughout the business meeting, but the sound of his mother's voice reminded everyone that he was still a child who needed the security of parental presence. He burst through the glass doors and ran into his mother's arms with the enthusiasm of a missile seeking its target. "Mama, Mama, you won't believe what happened." Ahmad's words tumbled over each other in rapid Arabic as he tried to convey the magnitude of the day's events. "I helped Uncle Omar with his important meeting, and the Chinese men were so impressed, and now they want to invest lots of money to bring electricity to poor villages, and they said I could be an ambassador to help tell people about it." Fatima Khalil held her son tightly, her weathered face showing confusion as she tried to process his rapid-fire explanation. She was clearly a woman who had once known privilege. Her posture and manner of speaking suggested good education and refined upbringing. But the lines around her eyes and the calluses on her hands told the story of someone who had endured unimaginable hardships and adapted to circumstances far removed from her original expectations. Omar approached Fatima carefully, acutely aware that he was about to change this woman's entire world and wanting to show proper respect for both her dignity and her role as Ahmad's mother. Despite her humble work clothes and obvious financial limitations, there was something regal about her bearing that commanded immediate respect. This was clearly a woman who had been educated, cultured, perhaps even wealthy, before circumstances forced her family into exile and poverty. "Mrs. Khalil, I'm Omar Al-Rashid, CEO of this company," he said in formal Arabic, using the respectful tone he would employ when addressing an honored guest. "Your son has just accomplished something absolutely miraculous. He saved our most important business meeting and helped us secure funding that will bring electricity to millions of families across Asia." Fatima's expression grew guarded with the wariness of someone who had learned through painful experience that when wealthy people took special interest in refugee families, it often meant complications that could disrupt the fragile stability they had worked so hard to achieve. Her protective instincts were clearly activated as she processed the implications of her young son becoming involved in high-level international business. "What kind of miracle, sir?" she asked quietly, her English heavily accented, but grammatically perfect, revealing the quality education she had received before war destroyed her original life. "And what does it mean for my son? I have worked very hard to give Ahmad a normal childhood despite our circumstances. I hope you understand that his education and well-being must come before any business considerations." The strength and dignity in her response impressed everyone present. This wasn't a woman who could be easily overwhelmed by wealth or intimidated by powerful men. She was a mother first, and her primary concern was protecting her child from exploitation while ensuring he had opportunities to develop his remarkable gifts. Ahmad interjected in rapid Arabic, his excitement making him speak faster than usual. "Mama, listen to what happened. Uncle Omar's Chinese translator got sick, and there was no one else who could speak Mandarin for the most important meeting of his life. I volunteered to help, and it went perfectly. Mr. Liu and Mr. Zhang were so impressed with my Chinese that they want to invest $700 million in Uncle Omar's solar technology." Fatima's eyes widened in shock as she processed her son's explanation. She had always known Ahmad was linguistically gifted during their long journey from Damascus to Dubai. She had made sure he maintained proficiency in Arabic, English, and Chinese, believing that languages would be his passport to opportunities that circumstances had denied him, but she had never imagined those skills would lead to involvement in international business at such a young age. "But that's not all, Mama," Ahmad continued, his voice growing more excited. "They want to offer me a position as a cultural ambassador. I would travel to different countries and help explain to people why this technology is important for families like ours, families who have lived without electricity or had to leave their homes because of war and poverty." Liu and Zhang had been observing this family interaction with growing respect for both Ahmad's character and his mother's obvious devotion to his welfare. Zhang stepped forward and addressed Fatima in careful Arabic that he had learned during previous business ventures in the Middle East. "Mrs. Khalil, your son is truly extraordinary," he said with deep sincerity. "He has just helped facilitate the largest business deal of our careers, but more importantly, he has reminded us why we began investing in technologies that can change the world. We would be honored to work with him, but only with your complete approval and under terms that protect his childhood and education." Liu nodded in agreement, adding his own perspective in the mixture of Arabic and English that had become the common language of this unprecedented gathering. "In Chinese culture, we believe that exceptional children are gifts that must be carefully nurtured, never exploited. We want to offer Ahmad opportunities that will help him grow into his potential while ensuring he remains grounded in the values you have taught him." Fatima looked between these powerful men and her small son, struggling to comprehend how Ahmad had become the center of such momentous events while she was upstairs cleaning offices and preparing for evening prayers. The situation felt surreal, like something from the Arabian Nights tales she had read to Ahmad when he was younger, where humble people suddenly found themselves at the center of extraordinary adventures. "I don't fully understand how this happened," she admitted honestly, "but I can see that Ahmad has made a strong impression on all of you. However, I need to understand exactly what you're proposing and what safeguards would be in place to protect his welfare." Her tone was respectful but firm, establishing that any arrangement would need to meet her standards as a mother, not just their requirements as businessmen. Omar stepped forward with the detailed explanation that Fatima deserved. "Mrs. Khalil, what we're proposing is a gradual program that would begin with small local events here in Dubai. allowing Ahmad to develop public speaking skills while remaining close to home and maintaining his normal school schedule. As he grows older and more comfortable, there might be opportunities for international travel, but always with appropriate supervision and educational components. He continued, "Most importantly, we want to establish an educational trust fund that would ensure Ahmad has access to the finest schools available, including university education, anywhere in the world he chooses to pursue his studies. This isn't payment for services, this is recognition that exceptional young people deserve exceptional opportunities." 6 months later, the auditorium of the newly constructed Al-Rashid Khalil Cultural Center in Dubai was filled to capacity with dignitaries, business leaders, medical professionals, and families from across the Emirates, China, and beyond. The morning sun streamed through Mashrabiya-inspired windows that cast geometric patterns of light across faces filled with anticipation and hope. Representatives from refugee organizations, educational institutions, and renewable energy companies had traveled from around the world to witness what many were calling a new model for ethical business partnership. But all eyes were focused on the small figure standing confidently at the podium, Ahmad Khalil, now 9 years old and wearing a traditional white thobe that Fatima had embroidered with golden threads, symbolizing the light he had brought into their lives and the lives of countless others. His transformation from a refugee child organizing cleaning supplies to a confident young ambassador was remarkable, yet he retained the same humble dignity and genuine warmth that had originally captivated 3 powerful businessmen in a Dubai boardroom. Assalamu alaikum, honored guests. Ni hao, dear friends from China. Welcome everyone who has come to celebrate what happens when people choose cooperation over competition, hope over fear, Ahmad began, his voice clear and strong as it echoed through the sophisticated sound system. His ability to switch seamlessly between Arabic, English, and Mandarin had improved dramatically through months of coaching, but more importantly, his natural charisma and authenticity had flourished under careful nurturing. In the front row, Fatima sat with tears of pride streaming down her face, her hands clasped in prayer position as she watched her son address an international audience with the confidence of someone born to leadership. Beside her, Omar fidgeted nervously with his traditional headscarf. Still amazed that this extraordinary child had not only saved his company, but had become his closest partner in revolutionizing how the world thought about sustainable development and refugee empowerment. Liu and Zhang occupied places of honor near the stage, their faces glowing with grandfatherly pride for the remarkable young person who had taught them to remember their original motivations for building business empires. Their investment had already yielded unprecedented returns, not just financially, but in terms of global recognition and the satisfaction of knowing their money was creating measurable positive change in the world. 1 year ago, Ahmad continued, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone who had learned to command attention while maintaining humility. I was just a little refugee boy whose mama cleaned offices to keep food on our table and hope in our hearts. I thought miracles only happened in the stories from the Quran that Mama read to me every night, or in the fairy tales she told me about our life before the war changed everything. He paused, scanning the audience with those wise, dark eyes that seemed to see straight into people's souls and find the goodness there. But then I learned something that changed my understanding of everything. Miracles happen every single day when people choose to use their gifts, their resources, their privilege, and their platforms to lift up others instead of just lifting themselves. The massive screen behind Ahmad displayed real-time data from solar installations across Asia, showing not just technical specifications and energy output, but photographs and testimonials from families whose lives had been transformed by access to reliable electricity, children studying by LED lights instead of dangerous kerosene lamps, medical clinics able to refrigerate vaccines and power life-saving equipment, small businesses thriving because they could operate after sunset. This technology that Uncle Omar created doesn't just generate clean energy, Ahmad explained with passion that was impossible to fake. It generates dignity, opportunity, hope, and dreams. It allows families to choose between buying food and buying light. It powers medical equipment that saves babies who might otherwise die from treatable conditions. It enables children to study after sunset so they can build better futures for their communities. Ahmad gestured toward a section of the audience where several families sat, refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, and other conflict zones, who had been employed by Omar's expanding company and given opportunities to rebuild their lives with dignity. But the real miracle isn't the technology itself. The real miracle is what happens when people remember that our success is meaningless, unless it creates opportunities for others to succeed as well. His voice grew stronger with conviction as he continued. When I first met Uncle Liu and Uncle Zheng in that boardroom, they were thinking like businessmen, focused on profit margins and risk assessments. But when they started thinking like the little boys they once were, boys who dreamed of building schools and hospitals to help their communities, everything changed. They remembered that business at its best is about building bridges between human need and human capability. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word from this remarkable child who spoke with the moral authority of someone who had walked through darkness and emerged carrying light. Ahmad's ability to articulate complex concepts about social responsibility and ethical business practices would have been impressive in an adult. Coming from a 9-year-old refugee, it was genuinely transformational. Today, we announce something bigger than business partnerships or technological innovations, Ahmad declared, his voice reaching every corner of the auditorium. We announce the founding of the Bridge Builders Foundation, which will provide comprehensive support for displaced families worldwide, not just financial assistance, but education, job training, language instruction, and most importantly, recognition that refugees aren't burdens to be managed, but gifts to be treasured. The audience erupted in sustained applause, but Ahmad raised his hand for silence, indicating he had more to share. My mama taught me during our hardest nights in the refugee camp that Allah doesn't burden any soul beyond what it can bear. But she also taught me that sometimes Allah gives special challenges to special people, not to punish them, but to prepare them for special purposes. His voice grew soft with emotion as he looked directly at the section where other refugee families sat, many of them now employees or scholarship recipients connected to the expanding network of programs that had grown from that original solar energy investment. To every person here who has lost their home, their country, their sense of belonging, you are not broken. You are not less worthy. You are not charity cases. You are survivors, dreamers, future leaders who carry the strength of your ancestors and the hopes of your children. Ahmad's message expanded to address the broader audience, his words carrying the weight of lived experience transformed into universal wisdom. And to every person here who has been blessed with wealth, power, education, or privilege, remember that our advantages are not rewards for being better than others. They are responsibilities to be better for others. As Ahmad concluded his take remarks and stepped back from the podium, the standing ovation lasted for nearly 10 minutes. But more importantly, the words of a 9-year-old refugee had crystallized a new understanding of how business success and social responsibility could work together to create sustainable, positive change. Later that evening, as Ahmad sat with Fatima on the balcony of their comfortable new apartment overlooking Dubai Creek, he asked the question that had been growing in his mind throughout the day's celebrations. Mama, do you think this is what Allah planned for us when we had to leave Syria? Do you think our suffering was preparation for this opportunity to help other families? Fatima held her son close, her heart overflowing with gratitude for the journey that had brought them from the darkness of war to the privilege of service. Ya Habibti, I believe that Allah never wastes our pain. Every difficulty we've faced, every night we spent afraid and uncertain, every moment we felt forgotten by the world, all of it was preparation for this beautiful mission we've been given. Ahmad smiled sleepily, clutching the small Quran that had traveled with them from Damascus to Dubai and would accompany them wherever their work as advocates for displaced families might take them. Tomorrow I want to visit the Children's Center and read Arabic stories to the newest refugee kids. I want to tell them that being different isn't a disadvantage. It's a superpower that can change the world if we're brave enough to use it. And in that moment, Fatima knew that despite all the recognition, opportunities, and material security that had transformed their lives, her son's heart remained exactly what it had always been, pure, generous, and completely focused on healing the world's broken places, one small act of love at a time. The story ends 3 years later, not with material achievements or business accolades, but with a quiet moment that captures the true transformation Ahmad had inspired. In a small village outside Beijing, powered entirely by the solar technology that had emerged from that fateful meeting in Dubai, a Chinese grandmother read bedtime stories to her granddaughter by LED light for the first time in her 70-year life. Half a world away in a refugee camp in Jordan, Syrian children attended evening classes taught by teachers who had been trained through the Bridge Builders Foundation's education program. Omar Al-Rashid, now recognized globally as a pioneer in ethical business practices, stood in his office looking at a photograph that had become his most treasured possession. It showed Ahmad, now 12 years old, surrounded by children from 15 different countries at the Foundation's annual Youth Leadership Summit. The boy who had once organized cleaning supplies beside a janitor's cart had grown into a confident young advocate who spoke 6 languages fluently and addressed world leaders about refugee rights and sustainable development with the same natural grace he had shown in that first miraculous meeting. The financial returns from the Chinese investment had exceeded everyone's projections, but the true success was measured differently. 43 countries now hosted solar installations that powered schools, hospitals, and community centers in underserved areas. The Bridge Builders Foundation had resettled over 8,000 refugee families, not as charity recipients, but as valued contributors whose skills and perspectives enriched their new communities. Ahmad's mother, Fatima, had completed her economics degree at the American University of Dubai, writing her thesis on sustainable development models that prioritized human dignity alongside environmental protection. She now served as the Foundation's Director of Family Services, using her own experience as a refugee to design programs that preserved cultural identity while facilitating successful integration. But perhaps the most profound change was in how international business was conducted. The Ahmad Protocol, as business schools had begun calling it, required major investment decisions to include assessments of humanitarian impact and long-term community benefit. Liu and Zhang's fund had become the most sought-after investor in Asia, not just because of their financial returns, but because of their commitment to supporting ventures that created positive social change alongside profit. The little boy who had appeared singing Chinese songs beside a janitor's cart had indeed changed the world, but not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions. He had done it by reminding powerful adults of their own forgotten dreams, by speaking truth with the clarity that only innocence could provide, and by demonstrating that the greatest miracles often came through the smallest hands guided by the largest hearts. In Dubai's glittering skyline, the Al-Rashid Tower stood as a testament to what was possible when business success was measured not just in financial returns, but in lives transformed, communities empowered, and hopes fulfilled. And at its heart was the truth that Ahmad had spoken in that first miraculous meeting. Some dreams are too important for humanity to let them fail. And the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or money, but the unshakable belief that every person deserves dignity, every child deserves opportunity, and every act of kindness has the potential to change the world.